YouthLead Webinar with our YouthLead ambassadors on youth action in fighting misinformation and infodemic in a pandemic. My name is Sarah Sladen. I direct the Youth Economic Opportunities Network at Making Sense, and I'm the Senior Youth Engagement Advisor with YP2LE. Just want to share a little bit about who our team is. You'll see some of our team members on this slide. Abolaji Omitagun is leading this morning's webinar with all of you, so that is the voice you are hearing. But we are a big team here at YouthLead that includes Christy Olenek, who is the Director of Youth Power Learning and Evaluation, Maria Brintelmeyer, who's Knowledge Management Specialist for YP2LE. We have Rachel Stepka, our Communications Manager, Abolaji, who you've met, Ikena Anyadike, who is our Knowledge Management and Communications Fellow with Atlas Corps, and Ephraim Bekele, who is our most recent Atlas Corps, who's joined us as a Youth Engagement Fellow under YP2LE. Just to give you some background about who we are, first of all, YouthLead is a global network of more than 6,500 young changemakers from around the globe that started as an activity under the USAID-funded Youth Power 2 Learning and Evaluation activity. YP2LE is short for a focus on knowledge sharing, learning tools and best practices, as well as what works in positive youth development. The definition of PYD, or positive youth development, is defined as follows. There are 4 components. The first is that youth have assets and should have the ability to leverage those assets through agency, as well as the ability to contribute to positive change for themselves and their communities. To do this, youth should be surrounded by an enabling environment that supports them. When we started under Youth Power Learning, so YP2LE is a continuation of the first phase of this project, which was Youth Power Learning, our main focus was on supporting organizations that served or implemented youth development programs, including those that carried out research. With YouthLead, which was launched at the World Bank's Youth Summit in 2018, the focus is on young people themselves, young change makers. And the goal of the site is to help them provide connections and support for their work, to access resources and information, funding, events, and other ways to engage, including webinars like this, which are dedicated learning events. The overall vision for the site is to serve as a global hub for young changemakers aged 15 to 35. We want to enable young changemakers to maximize their impact through networking, mentoring, and access to information. And we encourage you to visit the platform if you're not already familiar with it. There are a ton of information, there are discussion groups. The website is also available in English and Spanish and French, and we also have Google Translate on every page if you need additional language support. We also run campaigns and competitions. Our most recent was the YouthLead Turning Point Contest for Young Changemakers. This was a writing contest. We invited submissions of essays and poems in English, French, and Spanish. We recently announced our winners of the competition, and you can actually view all of the submissions on our YouthLead page. There are some beautifully written pieces online, and we really encourage you to visit the page and read some of the poems and essays that have been submitted by young people from across our network. In addition to competitions, we are also focused on COVID-19 and how we can respond through the platform. We are doing that through a global campaign called YouthLead Acts of Good. We are calling on all young leaders who have ideas, passion, dedication, who want to undergo service in your community, to tell us about what you're doing in your community. And by committing to a YouthLead Act of Good, you can take the pledge online. On the youthlead.org website, there are also a number of resources about COVID-19, including an information page where you can find the latest on the virus, tips and tools, health information, ways to support both yourself and your community during this crisis. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to this morning's speakers and to Abolaji for the YouthLead Acts of Good webinar. And thank you again to everyone for joining us.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. On today's webinar, I have 2 really interesting YouthLead ambassadors who will be taking us on the topic of youth action and fighting misinformation and infodemic in a pandemic. So we all know that the sudden global onset of COVID-19, has unleashed what the United Nations Secretary General now calls a pandemic of misinformation. And the WHO, as they've termed this, the infodemic. Since the pandemic began, we've been faced with a flood of online information that impacts our physical and mental health, and then and that of the people and communities around us. Much of this information we receive is not evidence-based. Sometimes are not evidence-based, or sometimes are not well informed or well intentioned. Misinformation spreads online in messaging apps from person to person. And in order to keep each other safe, we must fight misinformation with facts, evidence-based, and analysis and reporting. I'm happy to have introduced you to our Youth Lead Ambassador from Malawi, Zeito Fabiano, and our Youth Lead Ambassador from Liberia, Jotome Doten. Before we begin, I would like to call on Zeito to tell us about Zeito.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for having me on the platform, and thank you for the introduction, Abulaji. I am Zaito Fabiano. I'm the Malawi Youth Lead Ambassador. I'm a medical doctor, and I work in healthcare, but also most importantly in sharing public health information that is credible and evidence-based. So this webinar is something that's close to my heart in terms of the work that I do, but also as a young change maker, it's important that I share information in this time of the pandemic. So I'm very happy to have this opportunity to talk to you all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Zaitwa. I'd also like to call on Doten to please just quickly do an introduction of himself also, so that our audience know who they're having this conversation with. Doten?
Thank you, and I do appreciate all of you for joining us on this special informative webinar today. My name is Jutomo Dotin Jr. Previously, in 2018, I was nominated for the International Children Peace Prize for advocating for vulnerable children in Liberia. Previously, I served as former Speaker of the Liberian Children's Parliament, an institution that advocates for all of the children in Liberia. I have worked for young people for the last 6 years, and based on their stories, I continue to be motivated to work for young people. Currently now, I am serving as FP 2020 Youth Focal Point of the Republic of Liberia. I also serve as Adolescents and Youth Leader of Liberia, not forgetting Youth League Global Ambassador 2020. I'm glad to be with all of you, and I hope that young people monitoring this webinar today will be able to take some exceptional knowledge that will help their communities today.
Thank you very much, Doten. Really appreciate the introduction. So you see that we have really great and exceptional people on the call to really share about, take us on this topic. I would, without taking too much of your time, I'll just hand over to Zaitwa, who would do an introduction of the webinar and then run us through the webinar. Zaitwa, over to you.
Thank you very much, Abulaji. The first part of this webinar will be taken by Jutem, who's going to take us through the introduction and main points which have been highlighted in this slide, and then I'll take you through the second half of the webinar. Thank you. Jutem?
So, like I said again, I'd like to thank you all for actually joining us into this webinar, and it is a pleasure to join young people from around the world as we shared important information that are very much important in this entire pandemic. So in this webinar today, we are actually hoping that at the end of the day, our dear followers, young change makers from around the world, will be able to get series and many other knowledge from this webinar. For an example, we're going to share with you an introduction, that will be highlighting the kind of misinformation and what has been some of the quotation from world leaders about how to see misinformation in COVID-19 pandemic. We're also going to share with you some myths, the kind of misinformation, and also fights. We're going to share with you fights that will also guide you through. There has been numerous of causes of misinformation misinformation in the COVID-19 pandemic, which we are going to share with you. Additionally, the impact of misinformation on physical and mental health is something that we cannot just overlook and we cannot overemphasize. We are also going to show that in this webinar, we share with you how you can identify misinformation in the COVID-19 pandemic, how to also stop the kind of misinformation. And so one of the major areas we're also going to tackle of this webinar is to see the role young people should play in fighting misinformation in the COVID-19 pandemic. By the way, as you all know, there are about 1.2 billion young people around the world. And so at the end of the day, we're going to share with you lessons learned from misinformation in COVID-19 pandemic. Next. So, as you all have read, the first line of defense in the early days of an epidemic is accurate and trusted information. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called this a pandemic of misinformation, as we heard previously. However, on February 2020, the World Health Organization actually described a massive infodemic, citing an overabundance of reported information, accurate and most of all false, about the coronavirus. Next. At this time, we are now going to look at some of the common myths around the COVID-19 in our community, and we'll also look at some of the fights that are very vital to our understanding. Number one myth, and the first myth we're about to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, it is something that is almost all over and has been said all over around the world. People often believe that temperatures higher than 25 Celsius degrees prevents COVID-19. But what is the fight? The fight is that you can catch COVID-19 no matter how sunny or hot the weather is. For an example, countries with hot weather have reported cases of COVID-19. Let's take an example for Ghana. Ghana has reported over 200 cases of COVID-19. Ghana has a very hot weather. Liberia has a very hot weather. Malawi has a hot weather. India has a hot weather, alongside all the other countries. The temperature of a country doesn't prevent, the spread of COVID-19. Number two, people believe that eating, can you go back? Good. Number two, people believe that eating garlic helps to prevent infection. Well, I have done lots of research when it comes to eating garlic, but the reality is garlic is a healthy food that may have some antimicrobial properties. However, there is no evidence from the current outbreak that eating garlic has protected people from the new coronavirus. Next. Another myth we also want to share with you today is in most communities where people now think that ordering or buying products shipped from overseas will make a person sick. And, it's so hilarious. In my community, I saw a month ago lots of people refusing to buy new clothes and some people refusing to buy materials that were sent from abroad. The reason most of them had refused to take most of those products that were shipped from other countries because they believe, according to them, that COVID-19 might have been inserted on that, and that the fear existed that if they use those materials they will have been also infected by the virus. So they stopped using it altogether. And till now, there is a total fear over people having, or buying things from virus and other stuff. But this is the fight about the entire matter. The virus the virus actually kills, it dies within 48 hours. And 48 hours would just be like 2 days. So the virus dies within 48 hours on exposed surfaces. So that thing is not just true. The next myth that you might be thinking about, and world leaders were even talking about it, but now this is what we have. There are supplements which can protect you from COVID-19. Many people believe that there are, some other um, supplements that can help people, but it's not true. And then the fight here is that supplements like vitamin C, D, zinc, green tea, etc., they actually boost the immune system. But research hasn't shown us that they can prevent you from getting sick. The next slide. Now, you might have heard that chloroquine can cure COVID-19, but that's not true. The fight here is that at the moment, we have not seen or read any proven research that shows that chloroquine is a cure for COVID-19. The next myth that is so much popular today is the issue about drinking alcohol. Uh, Drinking alcohol protects you from COVID-19. I heard this in most of my communities, and people will say, man, if you drink, a certain percentage of alcohol, you're not going to feel anything. And this thing started coming at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then many guys will go to entertainment center at the time when government hasn't taken any action on people on the closure of businesses in Liberia. I saw many people going to entertainment center, all because they wanted to drink alcohol that will have help them to be safe from COVID-19. But that's not it. So young people around the world listening to us today, I want to tell you, based on research, that harmful use of alcohol actually increases your risk of health problems. For an example, if you dare start to drink too much alcohol, what's going to happen? You're going to have brain damage, you're going to have liver damage, and you're going to have lots of other problems that will affect your health. So drinking too much alcohol is not just a remedy to COVID-19 prevention. Next slide. Now, there are numerous of countries around the world that are now, into this kind of using a kind of 5G mobile networks. And more people feel that 5G mobile networks prevent COVID-19 spread. But the truth is, that is erroneous. Viruses cannot even travel on radio waves mobile networks. And COVID-19 is spreading in many countries that do not even have 5G mobile networks. So, I mean, country like Liberia do not have, 5G network. Ghana don't have it. Malawi don't have it. And many other countries don't have that. So, just by having 5G networks does not absolutely prevent you from getting COVID-19. As you all know, mosquitoes is a kind of stuff that that easily transmits malaria from one person to another. So most people believe that mosquitoes actually spread coronavirus, but that's false. According to the Center for Disease Control and the World Health Organization, there is no clear evidence that the virus can be transmitted by a mosquito bite. Next slide. Now, as we continue talking about the numerous of myths regarding COVID-19 pandemic, there has been one where people feel that only older people are at risk for the novel coronavirus. However, the fact is that new data from the CDC shows that among the roughly 12% of COVID-19 cases in the US known to need hospitalizations, about 1 in 5 were among people ages 20 to 44. And we all will agree together that people who are between the ages of 20 to 44 are not old people, but they are young people. So that myth going around that the COVID-19 only set people who are older at risk is being erroneous, and that's not true. Another myth is where people tend to talk about the issue about the usage of masks. Masks are not just enough to prevent people from getting COVID-19. The fact is that when the masks are not properly used or are not made for suitable materials for our protection, there is a greater risk. So the use of masks is not enough to prevent COVID-19. However, watching historically and often on the running water and soap for at least 20 to 30 seconds is the most effective protection. The next slide. Now, people like many of the people in my community right now still believe that when you drink hot cup of coffee or tea, it will help to kill the coronavirus. But the fact is that hot beverages may help you function or calm your nerves, but they have no such proven effect. In fact, drinks that are too hot may cause more than good, more harm than good, as they can destroy the protective epithelial layer in the mouth and throat. The next slide. Now, there are numerous of COVID-19 myths and misinformation that are going around, and I'm pretty sure most of you have heard numerous of them. But as for today's webinar, we're going to stop at this last myth and presentation of a fight. So, people talk about eating garlic and onions. Of course, they believe that it will help, prevent you from COVID-19. But the fact is that while garlic and onions are extremely healthy, high in antioxidants and have antimicrobial properties, there is no scientific evidence to prove that it will help the virus at bay. You understand? The next slide. Now, why do we have lots of myths going around about COVID-19? The following are major causes. Number one, we have experienced a kind of information illiteracy. And if you look at illiteracy around the world, according to research, there are more than 700 million people who cannot even read and write. So because they can't read and write, at the end of the day, most of them are, suppressed. They are pushed against the wall to accept those misinformation that come to them. The lack of ability of factual knowledge and valid information also plays a major role as being a cause of misinformation in the COVID-19 pandemic. People in rural areas, especially in countries where the education system the education system is not vibrant, people do not have access to factual knowledge, and it's a problem. Now, another cause of misinformation is panic, and the people with COVID-19 around the world, including young people, old people, and the list goes on and on. Kind of being like so scared and so like eager to get information from out there. And at the end of the day, when people get information, they tend to share those information with other people. But once those information are not valid, once those information are not, factual, people tend to carry wrong information, and that's how misinformation has been spreading in the COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, people want to get monetary gain. There are some media platforms where they tend to have this kind of a publication because they want to get money and because they want to gain the interest of the public and audience, and the list goes on and on. So we also look at political motivation. Some people want to become president in the next elections coming up. Some people want to take other national and local roles as well, but they feel that because COVID-19 has scared millions of people around the world, so they tend to take that as an opportunity to give people, wrong information. Another cause is also lack of internet gatekeepers. You look at Facebook, you look at Twitter, and many other, international social media. They do not have a kind of system that will track, misinformation, information that are not absolutely true. So at the end of the day, you see lots of information going on those platforms, and people have access to them free of charge. And because they get those information, don't just digest it. There is this competition in the media. all of the media institutions, both electronic and the list goes on and on, they want to show that they are the best newscasting institution. So they go about sharing information. Due to that kind of competition, most of those institutions are actually on the wayside of giving false information because they want to seek the, the audience attention and the rest of it. Let's go to the next slide here. So now, you know, I love this slide so much because I mean, during the entire COVID-19 pandemic, it has been so much silence. It has been full of stress, anxiety, sadness, loneliness, and for my personal experience, I haven't had a chance to go to work for almost 2 months. I have missed all of my work colleagues, all of my friends. I barely go to church anymore. And so because of that, COVID-19 has brought some physical and mental health issues to me personally and to many of you listening right now. So regarding the COVID-19, we are all aware that the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted, I mean, our physical and mental health. And how has this been done? So the increasing and numerous of misinformation, we know they consistently been thrown at us via social media. So at the end of the day, we feel stressed and come down with some mass panic. And the fear of transmission begets stigma, marginalization, which affects our physical and mental health. Poor mental health, you may also experience stress, anxiety, fear, sadness, loneliness. I know most of you here who are following this webinar, do experience those kind of things. Like, for example, during this period, most of you have been stressed, you feel some level of anxiety. Those are some of the physical and mental health we actually been experiencing in this COVID-19 pandemic. So also the use of unapproved cues, may lead to complications such as kidney, heart, or liver failure. Like we said previously, most of us have heard information, and because of those information we have, exhausted from the media. For example, drinking too much of alcohol, people say that it can help to prevent COVID-19. And if you do that, you're going to come down with kidney problem, with heart problem, with a liver failure, and the list goes on and on. So that is just the impact of misinformation on our physical and mental health during this pandemic. And at this time, I would like to turn over to my colleague from Malawi, Zaiwa, who's going to continue this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Jutem, for starting off the webinar very well. I'll proceed from here. Next slide, please. So then we've talked about misinformation, the causes, different types of misinformation, but now you may be wondering, how are you going to be able to identify misinformation from credible information during this COVID-19 pandemic? Because there is a lot of information everywhere, it's overwhelming. So firstly, what we need to recognize about misinformation is that misinformation usually has a mixture of correct information that has been altered or changed, or combined with myths and false information to create fake news. But also sometimes the fake news and misinformation that we get may be coming from a trusted member of family, a trusted friend. It could be a doctor in our community, a professor, a political leader, a celebrity. So how do we know whether this is misinformation or not when it comes from a public figure who we look up to and we trust? What's important is that whenever you receive information, before you share this, before you believe everything, read through it. I think most people have a habit of, you read the headline, you just scan through the document or scan through the article or poster, and then you share it. Let's take a pause and read through it. After we read through it, if we're not sure about what we're reading, even if we are sure, let's do some checks to find out if this is accurate information, if it's credible, and if it's evidence-based. Next slide, please. So how do we do this? Firstly, look at the source. Every information that you get must have a source. If it doesn't have a source, question where it comes from. But at the same time, we've also seen things where they reference to say it has been made by Taiwanese experts, Japanese doctors, Stanford University, Johns Hopkins, big credible names. But then when you say Stanford, who exactly? So please go to the website of these credible associations, credible organizations or names to go see if the information is there. If the information is there, then perhaps it's credible. But if it's not, it may not be. But also, if you hear information from a friend or a friend of a friend, that is a rumor, that is hearsay. So always make sure that you find out on your own, you do your research before you share that information. But also, we've seen a lot of things circulating around on social media which have a logo. They have a logo of WHO, UNICEF, or any other credible organizations. But what we have to keep in mind is that people have access to a lot of applications, a lot of software, and they're able to generate logos which are fake. And these logos may differ in terms of small characteristics, the motto below it, the color. So always go to the website and check if the logo really is real. If it's real and credible information which you find on the organization's website, that's well and good. Go ahead and share that information. If it's not there, question it, but also flag it. Because if you note that information is not credible and you do not report it, then you're perpetuating the cycle of circulating that information. But also there are a lot of fake social media accounts. We find their Twitter handles such as @BBC News, @BBC News account tonight, but these social media accounts are posting information that's not true. So always question these, and if you find that they're posting fake information, flag them, report them. And also look at the policies of the account, such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. They give you options to be able to flag and report accounts which are giving illegitimate information or harassing people on the site. Next slide, please. You also have to read through the language. You'll find that credible journalists and organizations are not likely to have a lot of spelling mistakes, semantic errors, and grammar mistakes in the article. But you find that some articles come with flashing emojis, a lot of exclamation marks, capitalization. This should give you a high index of suspicion that this information is probably not true, it's probably not credible, it's probably fake. If you come across such news, please do not share it, please flag it. But also you find that this kind of information comes with a lot of over-encouragement to share. You may find that at the bottom of the article, it may say, send to 100 people, forward to as many people, share to this number of people to get a certain thing. This should give you a high index of suspicion that this is probably fake information, and this is how information goes viral. When we share information that's not credible, that's how it becomes viral. Next slide, please. But also we have a lot of resources at our hands today. The internet can be used for fact checking. So there are a lot of fact checking websites such as AP Fact Check, Full Fact, where you can enter information and then run it through, use any search engines that you have, type the title of an article or type segments of it, and just try and look if the information is there. If the information is there, there are chances that it's credible. If the information is not there, it's probably fake. But also these sites are able to identify to say this is fake news, and thereby you'll be able to identify that this is not credible information. Next slide, please. But also when we're looking for information on our own, when we're doing our research, where do we look for research? If you go and look for your research on shady sites or unofficial websites or on social media, there are higher chances that you'll find information which is not credible. So I encourage you all to use sources of information which are credible, such as government health websites, ministries, health organizations such as CDC, WHO, and other organizations. These will have credible information, but also up-to-date information. What we have to remember about this pandemic is that this is something new for everyone. This is new for scientists, this is new for our leaders. So information is being gathered as we go along. So information that you found last week is not the same information that is credible today. It's not the same information that applies today. So keep yourself updated by going to these websites to see what kind of new research that they have done and the findings which are the facts today. But what we also have to keep in mind is that even government messaging and mainstream media, they can get things wrong. They too are humans. They have different kinds of errors that may come about. And because of this, what we need to realize is that it's not that these sources are not credible, but rather that sometimes they may have false information. So also what you can join is look up the conversation. You'll find a lot of verified information on this site. Next slide, please. So how do we as individuals, how do we as young leaders, change makers in our communities, how do we stop the COVID-19 pandemic? And what are the political leaders and the reputable organizations, what are they doing to stop this epidemic? So we've already seen that social media sites such as Facebook, Twitter, and also Google, they're working with WHO to address misinformation. So they've been removing content that has been flagged by global health organizations and local authorities that violate the content policy on misinformation. So this is very good for us. But also, Facebook is giving free advertising to WHO. What we need to remember is that misinformation can be drowned out by creating evidence-based information and vice versa. So the more credible information that we have circulating, we're going to reduce the amount of false information being circulated. So as we have more of the credible information by credible organizations being circulated, that's going to be good for us. But also, Amazon has removed more than 1 million products that claim to be cure or to protect against coronavirus. Because the different types of misinformation, other than the myths and the conspiracy theories, these drugs and products are also a form of misinformation. I'm sorry, Abolaji, can I have 1 minute? I'm having a poor internet connection. Sorry, 1 minute.
All right, sure, okay, not a problem. And so you can join our streams on Facebook Live or on Twitter also. So you can share the link on our Facebook Live to have more people tune in to this webinar. And while we wait for Doten, I would like to encourage you all to chat in the box your questions or any comments that you might have.
Thank you. I was able to fix the problem.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I apologize. So then another thing is about the conduct of ethical research to generate evidence-based information. We have seen a lot of clinical trials and research claiming to have this cure, having that cure. What we have to remember is that researchers have to be ethical in the information that they're generating, because this is the information that we're going to trust. So a lot of research organizations and sites have been calling out for evidence-based information and also publishing of information that is verified. But also reputable organizations developing and providing this evidence-based information must be the ones leading in coming up with the facts. They must not take a back seat to media houses or political leaders and other figures to come up with these facts. It must be them. But also the media houses. Media houses may be in competition to be the first to publish. They may want to be the first to have the information, but they have to be ethical before they publish any information by ensuring that it's credible. It's also very important for our leaders to address us, because when there is a pandemic going on or when there is any kind of crisis, people are eager to have information. People are eager to be informed. So it's very important that these leaders come together, bring us together, and give us a sense of security and safety so that we do not panic and end up spreading misinformation. Next slide, please. So what can you and I do? When we're sitting at home in lockdown, what can you and I do to help fight misinformation? According to UNESCO Institute of Statistics, we found that due to closure of schools in 188 countries affecting more than 1.5 billion youth and 63 million primary and secondary school teachers worldwide. So this means that there are millions of youth, billions in fact, who are sitting at home right now with almost nothing to do. We know that some of them have managed to have e-learning online, but that's not available to everybody. So there are a lot of youth who've been sitting at home and have nothing to do. This can lead to poor mental health, drug abuse, and many other things. So we implore you to use this time actually to be a young leader, to be a young change maker, to help in fighting this misinformation by doing what we have discussed. So we've also seen that during this time, there've been a lot of grants, there've been a lot of free courses, competitions, innovation ideas to encourage the youth to generate different ideas so that they can fight the COVID-19. We've also seen that a lot of youth who've lost their jobs have taken this time to be innovative and come up with social enterprises to be able to fight the pandemic. So firstly, how do you do this? You need to be informed. We've discussed about going online, doing your research, and finding out evidence-based information about the pandemic. But also you need to stop sharing any information that is not credible and be a leader in sharing evidence-based information. But also take time to do an awareness campaign. It could be online, you could call your parents, you could call friends, family, and just share information that's evidence-based with them. Next slide, please. So this time has been a learning point for everyone because this is new to all of us. This is the new normal. So we've learned a lot of lessons during this time. I think one important thing that I have personally learned is that we are really a global village. Anything that happens in Australia is going to affect us in Africa. What happens in Europe is going to affect people in Asia. So we're all interconnected. But also to be able to fight this pandemic, it requires a global effort that comes from everyone. But also, as good as social media is in keeping us connected during this time, it can be used as a tool for business, social entrepreneurship, innovation. We have to remember that it can also be used for bad. It can be used for harm through misinformation. But also, we have to be critical of everything that we read. We cannot believe everything that's given to us. We need to learn to be critical and do our research and make sure that we trust everything that's given to us. But also, now more than ever, we've recognized that research is key in providing credible and evidence-based information. So you may not be a researcher yourself, but you could be a participant, or you could be somebody who contributes to research in various ways, because that's the only way we're going to find out more about the pandemic, find a vaccine, and find a cure. And most importantly, we've realized that information is power. Without information, you will not be able to know what to do. You will not be able to protect yourself during this pandemic, and you will not be able to protect others. So stay informed and be informed at all times. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for joining us during this webinar. This is where I'll stop. I'll hand over to Abolaji. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zaitwa. This has been really, awesome listening to both of you share quite a lot of information about COVID-19 and helping us to really identify how, how to basically helping us understand how we can identify fake misinformation. I know that we still have quite a lot of time, so I'll be taking some questions that we have from some of our audience. There's a question here, but then there's no name to it, but then it says, what's the reality about COVID-19? What can we know? What can we really know about it from a reliable source? I'm not sure the question is quite clear, but I think this person really wants to know about COVID-19, the reality of COVID-19, if this is real or not. Yeah, COVID-19 is really real. I think our panelists have been really able to share quite a lot of light about this. I would like to also ask you, Zaitwa and Doten, I want to ask you, like, about use of technology, especially during this time of COVID-19. I know people, access to technology, if you pardon me, there are some communities where access to technology is almost impossible or nearly impossible. There are communities where access to internet connectivity isn't possible. How can young people, help these communities really get the right information, and also take note of language? Sometimes a barrier. Most of the information that being circulated are always in English. But how do you help these communities also allow them to be able to get the right information even in their local languages? So 2 questions: access to connectivity and technology, and then language. And then we can start with Doten, and then Zaitwa can go next.
Yeah, thank you, Abulaji, and I think it's a good time for my colleague Zaiwa to rest a bit. So I think it's important. That's a kind of important question to actually answer, because, for an example, in Liberia, there are thousands of people who do not have access to technology. So how do they have access to COVID-19 messages? How do they come to know that this thing is wrong or this thing is right? So I must appreciate government partners. I mean, the partners of government, right? Who have been very instrumental in creating different programs that, of course, are very clear about people having activities such as, some jingles in dialects, dramas, in local languages to help people understand, the issue about coronavirus. But then on the other hand, the media in my country and other countries I've read about, I have come to know that they are actually doing extremely well with information dissemination. I mean, the radio station, the television, they have been carrying out awareness, and of course, not forgetting local NGOs. Non-governmental organizations have also been engaged in reaching out to vulnerable communities, distributing rights. I think I got one or two documentaries here where young people, from my community decided to identify with people who they believe never had it during this COVID-19 pandemic. And I will let you, one of the things that I see happening during this period is the fact that almost everybody tend to listen to radio now. So, in as much as they wouldn't have phones to search the internet, they also got radios that they listen to, which is another form of technology.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Doten. Zaitwa, do you want to add to this?
Yes, please. Those are very great points. I'll just provide what's been happening in Malawi. In Malawi, 83% of the population live in rural areas where they have limited access to electricity, internet, television. And so, as he has said, radio has been a big part of it. But also what we have been doing in my place of work is we have cars with speakers on top, we have messages which have been translated into our local language. And these cars just drive around spreading the message to the locals so that they get an idea and a sense of what's going on. But also we've seen a lot of youth, a lot of YALI fellows, Young African Leaders Initiative fellows, they've been going into rural areas and providing education and teaching people about social distancing, hand washing, and other infection prevention measures. But there's also one person in particular I'd like to mention. There's a fellow from South Sudan. South Sudan has over 80 languages. And what he has done is he has translated to 15 of them, and he's been going around into the community spreading the word. So that's where we can call upon you as young leaders as well. As long as you're wearing your mask, practicing your social distance, washing your hands, you can go into these communities and talk to people from a distance in their local language and give them information, because people want to know, but they cannot understand, as we talked about information illiteracy earlier in one of the slides. So that's some of the things that are being done and what you can also do. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Zaitwa, for adding that great example. I was going to ask you just before that on about what great examples have you also seen in terms of like innovations during the COVID-19 pandemic that you would like to share with the audience at this moment? Have you seen any really interesting initiatives that young people are taking? If yes, would you like to share any?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking me that. I actually started a discussion about this on YouthLead because it's really interesting. So I've seen a lot of young people, some who have lost their jobs, some who have had to leave school. They're delivering fruits and vegetables to homes, and they're making quite a lot of money because people don't want to go out and buy things. So that's one simple thing that one simple thing that you can do. There's those who are sewing face masks, and there's some who are making shields. They're basically buying these plastic paper, sort of file covers. They're bending them, sticking them on the plastic foam, curling them around, and they're selling those. And then there are ones who are providing, because people don't have access to internet and communicate with their relatives in local areas. There are some people who are going to local areas and they'll let you know that we're in this village today. If you'd like to talk to your relatives in this area, just let us know and they'll connect you to them at a small fee. So these are just some small but really innovative ideas that people are putting to practice, and they're making a little bit of money at the same time. So I think it's very good.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, Dotan, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Zaiwa. I just wanted to buttress what she said because during this COVID-19 pandemic, we have really seen lots of innovations for young people, in many other communities. For example, we have witnessed in our country, Liberia, where people are now making hand washing buckets. I mean, they got the kind of continuum that is fixed, and there's a way you can even step on it, so you don't have to turn on the opener for you to wash your hand. Instead, you can just step on the bottom of the stuff, and the water will waste. When you're done, you just remove your legs from the stuff, and it will stop. And so that has been one of the exciting innovation here in Liberia. Additionally, young people have been totally involved and engaged in this COVID-19. I saw, and I've been seeing something like young people getting at the entrances of every community. So the major entrance at a community, you will find out that you see 2 to 3 young persons standing right there. They got a rope from the other side of the road to the other side of the road. They got chairs sitting right there, and then anyone who is coming into that community or environment, they will kindly walk to that person, observing social distancing, and ask that person to wash his or her hands. So with that, they are able to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in their respective communities in Liberia. I think that might be happening in some other communities around the world. Additionally, um, I must appreciate the Ministry of Education here in Liberia, who started the Teaching by Radio program. And so, because there are numerous of children who are not going to school, schools have shut down and other things have happened, which has affected children and young people education. So the government of Liberia was able to initiate a teaching by radio, and so that there can be different lessons on the radio every day. There are different lessons, taught. They got experts, they got professional teachers who come and do the lesson on the radio, and children are able to get access to different lessons, just as, if they were in school. And then I have also witnessed an organization called Hope Liberia. So Hope Liberia is currently sharing forms, to vulnerable children. Of recent, I saw them sharing forms with some orphans in some communities. The essence of giving children phone is just to use the radio on the phone to listen to their program. So to admit, there has been lots of innovations, and from my home, I think if you check on the YouTube platform, you might have seen a couple of videos that I personally did, because I felt that just sitting home, I could use my voice to inspire people around the world to prevent themselves from getting COVID-19. So I too was doing motivational videos on YouTube and inspiring people, telling people to take preventive measures because COVID-19 is absolutely real.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Dotan. Talk about act of kindness, act of good. So here's another good way to think about the youth lead act of good. So you can take the pledge. You can begin to engage in interesting activities. For example, even just recording or inspiring young people using your channels, your social media channels. There's a question here I would like to ask you both about. Too much information, which can lead to anxiety. Would you like to share your thoughts about information? There's an overload of information, and there's too much information, and then sometimes it affects the our mental health and our ability to really take in any more information. Do you want to share, Zaito, a little bit about this from your experience?
Yes, thank you. The COVID-19 is a crisis, and it causes panic and other negative emotions in different people. So when you constantly are getting this negative information, statistics about death, how it's spreading, unemployment, and all the negative consequences of the pandemic, that makes you feel sad. There are hormones in the body that are produced that make you feel low. And if you're constantly tapping into this, you're constantly producing more and more of these hormones, which make you feel even lower. And this can lead to various mental health problems such as anxiety, depression, alcohol abuse, drug and substance abuse. So what we're saying is it's important to be informed, but only to a limit. So if you know the facts about COVID-19, if you know how to protect yourself, that is really the minimum that is enough for you. And you should take the rest of the time to protect yourself in terms of your mental health and physical health. So do not always be on the news, do not always be on social media sites looking at statistics and data about how it's spreading and how it's affecting people. As long as you know the basic information and you're protecting yourself and others, please take a step back and do things that are going to be good for you. So we're encouraging you to exercise around the house. You can walk around, do some home exercise videos, eat healthy, sleep enough, and try to maintain some kind of normalcy in your life. Although we're social distancing, make sure you still stay connected to your loved ones and your friends using various social media platforms, using phone calls and other things, because that's going to keep you in a good place. So the most important thing at the end of the day is you need to take care of yourself. So as we come out of this pandemic, you're going to be fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zaid. And I think, Jonathan, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, so I will briefly add to what my colleague said. She was absolutely right. And when people oftentimes get the kind of barrage of different kind of information from different other sources, it brings confusion in homes. And so at the end of the day, you will realize that the entire family will be stressed up. There will be tension in the family because nowadays people are researching. The father is researching, the children are researching, and everybody just researching. So you kind of like in Africa and in my community, to be more practical, I see some parents and children having different forms of conversations, and parents sometimes feel that their children wants to disrespect them, but their children have also been doing some research. For example, taking other preventive measures. Some of them do not want to use a mask. Some of them, do not want to avoid social distancing. So based on their different research, they kind of bring pressure, stress, and tension to the family. That is why, like my colleague said previously, when you are researching or you're on the internet and doing some other things, you got to look at the sources of those information, the kind of
Awesome.
website they're coming from and other stuff, which will help you a lot.
Thank you very much. Lastly, I just want to give an opportunity for somebody, one of our audience, to just make a comment. I see Youth and Women Uganda on the call. Would you like to make any comment? I see also Ronald Tatenda. You have the mic and are able to make a comment.
Yeah, this is Andrew Aworoko from Uganda for Youth and Women for Opportunities Uganda. Yes, in like us in Uganda, though the youth are expected to put on the mask, we don't actually have masks. The government had promised us that they're going to give the free masks for everyone, so there was no opportunity for masks. So people are going out without masks, and everyone's just going out with business without any masks. The children do not put on masks, and that we stand a risk of getting infection. And I mean, they opened the lockdown. One of the conditions for opening the lockdown that we were going to put on masks, and the masks were not supplied. So we are trying to make the masks locally for ourselves with the local materials that are again inadequate. So we are really looking out for partnership that give us an opportunity to make the mask. Yes.
Thank you, Andrew, for sharing this comment and insight. I really hope the government begin to work hard to really provide us this necessary infrastructure. I see Ronald Tatenda also raising up his hand. Ronald, you have the mic.
Okay, thank you very much, Abolaji, and thank you to Zaitwa and colleague for the great presentations. I would also love to share that, representing the Africa Youth Front on COVID-19, which is a high-level policy framework that has been put in place by the African Union, to coordinate young people's responses to COVID-19, especially those who are in the African region. it is our key, our priority to also be fighting misinformation and to be providing accurate and correct information around, the COVID-19. And a splendid job, to the great presentations. What we need at this particular moment is, solidarity amongst ourselves as young people. It is only us who can provide the correct information and fight misinformation. Always to be guided as well by the leave no youth behind principle, especially those who are without the access to the internet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ronald. Appreciate your contribution. Thank you again to all our speakers. It's been really awesome listening to you and really great hearing to learn from your perspective. Ephraim, would you like to close us out on this webinar and really sharing about to our audience how they can join or participate on the YouthLead platform?
Thank you, Abolaji. Thanks very much for this awakening presentation. It was very thoughtful. Thanks for our participants both on Zoom and Facebook Live and Twitter. If you have not yet joined our website, which is the youthlead.org, we encourage you to do so. This will enable you to network with other young change makers, and also you can have a discussion in the group. As a member, once you are a member in the website, you can also post contents, for example, resources, blogs, short videos, events, funding opportunities, and you can also join the discussion groups. You can also post your projects to get more visibility for them, and for every contribution, you earn points, and these points will change into badges based on the points. And every month, members are also get the YouthLead newsletter, which is very interesting and also which highlights the young change makers and opportunities for the youth. And also finally, you can also follow us on our social media. For example, today we were broadcasting on Twitter and Facebook. You can follow us there for the latest updates. And above all, reach out to the speakers, today's speakers, and continue this discussion about this topic on the YouthLead discussion group. Next, please. Next slide. Yes, thank you. We have sponsors, and we would like to thank our various sponsors who are promoting YouthLead to their youth networks and contribute resources, events, and various funding opportunities. Our sponsors are offering their expertise, knowledge on various topics, and we work with them to organize skill building training webinars just like this one, and also with our YouthLead members. You will hear some of them in the future webinars, and generally we have 23 sponsors. Thank you for joining us. We hope you will join our next webinar. Check the events on the youthlead.org for new webinar announcements. And as we said in the beginning, the slides and recording will be made available to all of you on youthlead.org and sent to all registrants. So we hope to see you the next time. Until then, please stay safe, keep washing your hands, and maintain social distancing. And from my side, I would say have a good day, have a good evening, and stay well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Zaitwa. Thank you, Jota.
Thank you very much for having us. It's been wonderful. And thank you for everybody who participated.
Thank you very much for the very, very interesting knowledge you've given us today.
Yeah, we do appreciate every one of you. Thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure. Always remember to take preventive measures. And to everybody who's following us today, we also understand that we have not won the fight against COVID-19, so we shouldn't be complacent. Let's keep on doing more. And young people, a lot is actually expected of us, and to the national government. I hope that governments around the world will not just be complacent about implementing health protocols due to the issue they talk about the economy and so on. But it's important that we keep on fighting the COVID-19 pandemic so we win it. And also it's important for us to understand that information maintenance is also important. So acquiring the right one will also save all of us.
Thank you very much. A good way to end the webinar. Appreciate it. Have a good day. Bye.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, everybody.